So thank you very much for everyone for coming. It's nice to see everyone, and especially to Phil for inviting me, and to Joan for introducing me. It's a pleasure to be here. So, I mulled over, since Phil invited me to come and talk, which was before Christmas, I think, something like that. Sort of, where do I go, what do I say? There's so much to say, and yet the more I practice and the more I teach, the less I have to say. And not knowing, some of you I do know, but most of you I don't know. So you're going to have to sort of bear with me when I start talking about the Dhamma, my own practice and my study, because that's where I come from. I'm not a intellectual. I've done a lot of studying, but I'm not scholarly. But what I can share with you is my own experience and my own knowledge. And like Joan was saying, I started on this path in the late 60s. And at that time we were living in Montreal. And I went to a yoga class is what I went to, and it just clicked. The very first class went, oh, this is good, I like this. And then we moved to Alberta in '72, and there were a few of us, I'm going to say 5 or 6 yoga teachers, and we started to get together and decided it would be good to have an association, a provincial association. And we had 2 people in that group. One worked for the provincial government, Dr. Dhanaraj Hubert, and one was Mohan Singh, and he worked at the university. And so we had a really good foundation for applying for grants and getting recognition, which we did. That association is this year having their 50th anniversary, which is really quite something. Supported by the province, we get grants from the government to support fitness through yoga. So through that, I was introduced to meditation. And just to give you a little bit of a background, moved to Calgary, after 2 years in Edmonton, moved to Calgary. And part of our yoga association was inviting people to come to do retreats and workshops. And someone said, let's do meditation workshop. And yeah, okay. And I was in charge of workshops at that point. So I write this letter to a good friend, deceased now. Her name was Anagarika Dhammadina. She was a Buddhist nun. I had not met her, but she was living in the Kootenays at that time. So I wrote her a letter and said, would you come and do a retreat for us? Oh yeah, I'll come. We'll do 5 days. Well, I had no idea what I was getting into. None. So we rented Bragg Creek, Camp Horizon, didn't even know that. And I convinced my yoga students, because I was teaching and had classes going on, to come. And there weren't many of us, I'm going to say probably 20, but it was a silent retreat, 5 days. Well, it was, looking back on it, I've often said it was probably the hardest 5 days I've ever put in my life. And yet it was the most beneficial thing I've ever done. And it was just, again, it just clicked for me, and I thought, this is it. So that was my first introduction to Buddhism. And so when Phil said to me something about mindfulness or awareness, can I talk about that? Well, to be honest, the only way I can talk about that is through Buddhism. So you're going to have to put up with my little Buddhist stories, because that's how I've learned about mindfulness. And in the Buddhist teachings, the word is called Sati, S-A-T-I, Sati. And in the Western part of the world, mindfulness has taken on so many different meanings. And so you can think of it as, when I was taught in my early years in my study, Sati meant memory. It meant remembering. It now has so many different, each of you could take the rest of your life and study what mindfulness is, and you wouldn't reach the end of the different ways it's used and the connotations that it's used. You have to be mindful of reaching for your cup and having a drink. That's sort of conventional everyday mindfulness. And that's necessary. We need that in order to live our lives in a wholesome way, in a way that's beneficial. Beneficial for ourselves and for those around us, for society, for nature, for our lives. But when you start practicing meditation, then that mindfulness takes on a whole different game. And I often talk about it in an ultimate sense as opposed to a conventional everyday sense. And so you have to keep that in mind. So what I learn about mindfulness when I'm meditating, I bring into my day-to-day life. To me, that is so important. We're here. We're as human beings. We live in a society that really depends on goodness, healthy minds, healthy bodies. One of my favorite sayings is, relax the body and calm the mind. And because I had done quite a bit of yoga when I started, Shavasana, relaxation, was the highlight of the class. And so when I started meditating with Anagarika, it was easy for me. I know it's not easy for a lot of people. I have two new students, and one happens to be my sister-in-law, and the other is a good friend. And they both wanted to learn how to meditate. And it's not easy. It isn't easy. And there's so many methods, and there's so many techniques, and that's what they are. Again, that's something I've had to learn. Anagarika taught me this, and I just did what she told me. Just in I don't know how much detail to go into. She was taught in the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition, which is from Burma. And so that's what I was taught. And I can't say enough how much I appreciated the techniques that she gave us. And I'm the type of person I like to be told what to do, and I'll do it. I don't question it, I just do it. And so she had this idea of labeling. And if you go back and look at Mahasi's, the books and the literature on him, that's very common in Burma. It's a very common Burmese technique. And it just made sense to me right from the beginning, because it was a technique that I could take from that 5-day retreat and take it home with me. And so simple things, the kids would spill their milk, and inside I would be going angry, angry, angry. I would label, but that helped to diffuse the anger that was building up inside me. And so that's sort of the basis of it. Back to my 2 new students that I just got in the last month. I started giving them this technique. Neither of them could do it. They couldn't do it. And so now what I have them doing is sitting 5 minutes a day. Set the timer, 5 minutes. That's all you gotta do. Just sit for 5 minutes. One I got lying on her back, my sister-in-law, with her legs up the wall and her hands on her belly. No deep breathing, no breathing in and out, Just lie with your hands on your belly to get her to start to sense the body. Most people don't know much about the body. And yet the body, that's where mindfulness starts. You have to bring that awareness into your physicalness. We are physical beings. And I've worked with a lot of athletes over the years, and that was probably one of the first things I ever taught them, was lying on the floor, legs up the wall, with their hands on their belly. So that mindfulness starts to become clearer. You don't have to talk about it. You don't have to label it so much anymore, I don't think. But the awareness has to come. What am I feeling? And not intellectually, but what am I sensing? What is my body sensing? If the body is calm, if the body is relaxed, the mind becomes calm. And that's a big part of meditating. It's a big, huge part of Buddhism and meditation. Is the basis of turning inward and learning more about ourselves inwardly. And we do that by, first of all, recognizing what we're feeling. What's happening? Does my heart start racing? Do I get thirsty? Do I get shaky? And tonight, I used the word relax multiple times. In my beginning years, I didn't like it very much. It felt like a command, and I was tough enough on myself, and I'm going to relax. Well, that's not how you learn how to relax. It's by pounding yourself and saying, come on, relax. And yet, if it's used, I think, with the right intention, then the relax it's just something you become aware of inside as well as outside. I'm going to just go a little bit more into just some of the Buddhist teachings that I really believe are necessary. And I was talking to Phil tonight about this. In the Buddhist teachings, the Buddha in the canon explains that I teach only one thing: suffering and the end of suffering. So what does that mean to you? What is the end of suffering? And there were 4 noble truths that are very fundamental in the Buddhist teaching. 4 noble truths. Just 4. But the 4th one, which is the one that I think is really an important part, is the Noble Eightfold Path. And the Noble Eightfold Path is a way, it's something very practical that we can live with and learn to reach some freedom. But it's a path. And mindfulness happens to be the 7th step on that path. So I personally don't believe you can just do mindfulness if you don't have the other 7 steps. To me, it's all important. And how much you understand that, and how much you take that in your own daily life, that's a choice we all make. But the ultimate goal is freedom. So what does that freedom mean? For me, again, I go back to Anagara because we studied so much of this through the Abhidhamma, which is the psychology of the Buddhist teachings, are 3 things, and they're simple: greed, hatred, and delusion. 3 unwholesome roots. There's 3 wholesome roots as well. But the awareness that has to come is to see in our lives where greed, hatred, and delusion are causing us pain and suffering. And they do, in so many ways. So that comes through awareness. So when I say something and it's nasty, can I pick it up? And I can tell you lots of stories of my own aha moments. And one I will share with you. This happened years ago, many years ago. We had gone to a Christmas party, my husband's partner, and he just lived a few doors down from us. And we'd gone to the Christmas party. I didn't like parties, but I sort of, put on a smile and off I went. But I was grouchy, and I look back on it and I think I was darn miserable. I didn't want to be there, wasn't my thing. So we go to the party, we go to come home, we just walk 3 houses down, and I specifically remember walking up the driveway. We had a Volvo car at the time. This is the kind of detail when you have these insights that stick with you. It's phenomenal. Up the driveway, and I said something very nasty about the hostess. And it was the first time, it was like somebody hit me with a hammer. It was the first time that I sort of stood back and thought, that was nasty. Like, that was really nasty. And I caught it, just like that, and turned to my husband, apologized, but for days, for weeks after that, I kept labeling to myself, regretting, because it kept coming up. And so when you do something that's, is just not, it's not wholesome, it's not beneficial in any way, the mind gets a hold of that. And so with meditation, for me, what's happening is I'm looking at mind states, being aware of what's arising. Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome? And we can choose. Once we're aware, we can choose what we want to do with that. But if we aren't aware, if we don't see the subtleties in our day-to-day thoughts and in our day-to-day actions, we just keep bumbling on. And every time we bumble on, we create more harm, more unhappiness for ourselves. So this is why, for me, the awareness, the mindfulness is so important. I have to see that. And somebody telling me that is not going to help. My husband's tried lots. Yeah, maybe you should just go meditate for a while. No. So, but I can see it at these points when the mind is calm, the body's relaxed, then I get glimpses of what's happening for me. That is beneficial. To me, that is mindfulness. And as I pick out these, Anna Garrica used to talk about a garden, and you pick out weeds. And when the weeds are little, you can pick them out. They're not so hard. But let them grow into a big tree. They're rooted. Those are difficult. They're difficult. You can still work with them, but it's a lifelong challenge. So we use mindfulness in a way that's very skillful, very skillful. And if you've got a good teacher, good group, people coming together, sharing their ideas and their thoughts, very supportive. And like I say, I think the whole Noble Eightfold Path is something that's really important for us. Yeah. I don't think you can leave it out. Mm-hmm. Mm. The basis, two things that come to my mind. The basis is morality or virtue. And again, mindfulness, we bring into, are my actions helpful? Are they skillful? Are they hurting somebody? Or do they benefit somebody? Just actions, speech. Another one. The Buddha says that this is the hardest one, is right speech. And so, again, can we become more mindful, more skillful in the type of language we use, our voice, speech, action, very, very important. And the other thing that comes to mind is loving kindness. It's a big part of my training. Kindness, generosity. Important in the sense of, can I live my life that way? And how do I feel when I live my life in that direction? I think it's always important to turn back. How am I interpreting this? How am I feeling? With the words I say, with the actions I do. So, I'm open to questions, comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Jayanta. Before we start taking questions, just I will rephrase your question for the sake of the recording. But we just ask that the question that you phrased or you asked of Jayanta is pertinent to tonight's topic, on the topic of mindfulness. If it's something really personal and it's more like for something that maybe you would share with a therapist or something like private like that, then please maybe consider the forum. So try to ask a succinct question that is applicable for others in the audience, if you would. So are you ready for the first one?
Sure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Who'd like to start?
I'll start. My name is Andrew.
Hi, Andrew.
I've been with the group now for about 3 sessions, but I practiced mindfulness out of Vancouver for a couple of years, actually. It was very beneficial post-injury, brain injury. But I do live with a chronic pain condition, and even with all my training in mindfulness, especially, and you can do Buddhism, I still find it very difficult not to be distracted by the pain condition that I live in. Although one of the best experiences ever was when in a meditation, actually it was a long meditation, and I found myself somehow free, or not focusing on that pain so much. And that's when I really started to focus on mindfulness and Buddhism, the heaviest level, right? Or the most in-depth level. But still to this day, after all these years, I still am distracted by this situation. I guess I'm looking for a way to be stronger, even stronger in terms of my focus on the present moment. Right? Yeah.
The pain is
Before you answer, could you summarize or would you like me to summarize? So thank you for asking the question. You mentioned utilizing meditation and having difficulty focusing on meditation because of the chronic pain.
Yeah.
You mentioned in a meditation or something like that. I'm sure maybe you understand the term. Maybe you could explain that to those of us who aren't familiar with it and answer Andrew's question.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Pain is probably one of the best teachers that we have.
Yeah.
So we can first of all be thankful for the pain. I've been through there. That's been my path.
Yeah.
So I can speak from experience. The first thing to realize when something is, and I will go back to when I first started labeling, and I would say painting. Then as more and more I did that, the important part is to watch your reaction to the pain. And we either like it, we're neutral to it, or we dislike it. And just that awareness of, am I reacting to this? Do I like it? Well, generally with pain we don't, but times when it's not so bad. But most of the time we're resisting it. So when we're resisting it, we're putting up blocks, we're putting up barriers. And that physically will react in the body. The body will tighten. That's just part of the body. It does that. And so that's the first thing I would watch for is, am I liking this or am I disliking it? And I do recommend that give yourself permission to move, to adjust, to use a position. You don't have to be sitting. You can do walking meditation. You can do lying meditation. So give yourself permission to make yourself as comfortable as possible. Sometimes you'll be more skillful at it than other times. You will. But pain is dukkha in the Buddhist teaching. And dukkha is not just physical pain, it's a mental pain, it's emotional pain. And it's unsatisfactoriness. It's something we don't want. And it's something that we need to learn how to read. That's why I use the word relax. Another word that I used for many years was letting go, relinquishing it. Just give it up. Just give it up. And I've had some pretty powerful insights, and one of the insights that I had was I got to the point where I literally thought, I can't bear this anymore. It was in meditation, thank goodness, and Agarika happened to be there at the time. I didn't know what was going on at the time. I realized and understood it later. But ultimately what I was doing was I relinquished it. The pain was so bad that I just thought, I can't stand this, I've got to let it go. And it was just an aha moment, an awakening moment. But do give yourself permission to be gentle, and there are going to be times when it's easier than others, depending maybe on the weather. I like warm weather, so you put me in warm weather and I don't hurt nearly as much as I do in the cold weather. It's just simple things like that.
Thank you.
About the beginner's question, when you say you're letting go of it, that you're meaning that you are giving up resisting the pain, like, is that what you mean?
Just to rephrase for the recording's sake, you're asking a question from a beginner's perspective about what Jayanta means by letting go.
I think on a practical sense, it means relinquishment to me. It means just saying, I can't bear this anymore. And that one of my teachers that I had, often, if I was explaining to him what I was going through, he'd say, can you bear it? That was his comment, can you bear it? And all the time I could say, yeah, I guess I can. It might be hard, but I can do it. But this one time when I had this insight, I got to the point where I couldn't bear it. And this gets, well, for me it gets, how much do I share? What that meant for me at that time is I myself got out of the way. There was no me. And in the Buddhist teachings, letting go of self is a really important part of the teaching. And at that particular point, I just got out of the way. Now, I can't explain how I did that. I really don't know. It's just that I got out of the way. And it took me into a whole new a different type of reality than everyday conventional reality. Took me into that openness, that spaciousness. But believe me, in all these years, the acknowledgement, the mindfulness, the understanding of what was actually happening it is very important for us to mentally understand, oh, I'm emotionally attached to this, or I really don't like that. And it sounds simple, and yet the more you meditate, the more that understanding comes. In the Buddhist teachings, wisdom is the understood experience. So it's not up here. It's not you thinking about it. That's not going to solve it. Whatever the struggle is, whatever the dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness is. No. And it's good to talk about it, it's good to read about it, but you have to practice. And however you practice, whatever that means for you, but it's relaxing the body, calming the mind.
When you were able to get out of the way, did you find that the pain would present itself differently, or did you feel it?
It wasn't there.
It was gone.
It was gone. Absolutely gone. It was phenomenal. Yeah. No, just wasn't there. But neither was I there. That doesn't make sense, but it does make sense once you've had that experience. Yeah. Yeah, you step out of the way. I've done lots of retreats, and I've taught lots of retreats. And I remember a retreat, Olivier, you might have been there, it was out at Caroline, and I had my students do walking meditation, and I had them walk with their hands like this. It was outside, it's a beautiful retreat center up there, lots of trees and grass, and I just had them do walking meditation like this. And it was something that came to me when I did this. I got out of the way so I could walk, but it wasn't me walking. And it was just that physicalness of out of the way. Get out of the way. Because most of the time, we're in the way. I'm very much in my head. Not so much anymore, but because I can get out of the way. But that was, I like to think. I like to use my brain. But in meditation, you're not thinking. So you might want to try that. Try walking out anywhere. Just take your arms up and it brings you out of yourself. It does, physically, it takes you back. So then instead of being out here and always going forward, and in our society we like to go forward. We like to think we're getting somewhere, we're doing something good, we're always into the future. This brings you right back into the present moment. Try it.
We were talking before about what is mindfulness. And as you said, Buddhism, like mindfulness, is not monolithic, it's pluralistic. But contemporary mindfulness would say awareness of the present moment on purpose in a particular way.
Is it non-judgmentally?
Non-judgmentally. And this is really been populated by John Kabat-Zinn, but historically by a German monk who talked about what was called bare attention, the capacity to be present without any interpretation. So the question for you is, what do you think of this current definition of mindfulness? How does it really sit with historic sati? And is it possible for us to be non-judgmental? We are all biologic animals. Everything we encounter, we subconsciously judge or interpret. Will this affect my survival or not? And we need to know what we're dealing with in order to process and act on it.
I'm going to gain a little bit of history here. When I was studying in my early years, I'm still studying. It doesn't stop for me. But in my early years, and particularly my basis was in the Buddhist teachings. And Nyanaponika was Anagarika's. My Anagarika, I call her my Anagarika, my Buddhist nun, had studied with him. And so that all connects back to some pretty profound interpretations from the Pali into English in those early years, mostly in Sri Lanka, but not only, and in Burma as well. And so because I came from this base and this foundation in my original training, when I first heard John Kabat-Zinn teach, I liked what he was saying, and I liked the way he could describe it in English, in a way that I thought Western people could understand. But I wasn't happy that mindfulness had been taken out of the Noble Eightfold Path. I didn't like that. I've changed my mind a little bit over the years, but it was out of context. And especially in Western psychology, mental health from a Western point of view, yeah. It's more than just one thing, mindfulness. And it really is, it involves so much, and it's so many different levels. So many different levels. And so when it's taught, and the Western psychology will just say, be non-judgmental. Just let it come and let it go. Well, that's not so skillful. To me, that's not practical. We're human beings. We're here. We've got biological, mental, emotional parts of our being. So to me, that can't be separated in that way. You want to be able to, and I do this in my practice, I do it in my day-to-day life now all the time. It's just part of who I am. Seeing things as they are, but still having the wisdom to discriminate whether what is happening is beneficial or not, helpful or not, wholesome or not. Is it skillful? And if it's not, then you do this. If it is, well, then you do that. So this idea of just letting thoughts float through, to me, I don't like it. To put it simply, I don't like it. That interpretation of it. Okay? So, and judgmental is a word gained in our English language that I think is a little difficult, because in the Buddhist teachings, you do have to discriminate. We do need to make choices. And that's where, coming into this relax the body and calm the mind, when the mind is calm, we can see more clearly. Seeing, mindfulness is seeing. Seeing things as they really are. And so that doesn't mean that I don't react to it, but I react skillfully. Let me put it that way. So I respond. This is a common Buddhist saying. You don't react, but you respond. And if you're calm and you're living a life that's really true to your heart, then it becomes easy. Really becomes easy. Your life becomes easier. You become happy. And it's not a false sense of happiness. It's a really inner peaceful contentment that's heartfelt, not intellectual, not from your head, but from your heart, from your inner being. And believe me, it takes a lot of practice. The Buddha talks about a gradual awakening. Now, I do believe there's spontaneous awakenings from people I know and from my experiences, but generally it's a gradual step by step by step. And I tell my students, until you've practiced, and I mean practiced, and when I say practice, I'm generally meaning sitting on your stool every day for at least an hour. To me, that's just the tip of the iceberg. But until you've practiced for 10 years, you're not gonna really, not that there won't be changes in that 10 years, but you won't understand them. Chances are you won't understand them. And to me, this is why I've been really fortunate. All of my training has been with monastics. And I'm not saying monastics are the only enlightened ones. A lot of them aren't. A lot of monastics aren't. But the ones I've had the privilege of working with after over 50 years, they've been so helpful to have that help, interpretation. And then I can look back now and say, oh yeah, in my first 10 years, I really knew nothing. I thought I knew it all, but I really knew nothing. And so after 10 years, look back, see what's happened for you in your life in 10 years. Maybe you're not getting as angry as you used to. Maybe you're sleeping better. Maybe you're concerned more with your diet. All of this is part of the parcel of being a human being. And then look back after 20 years. And I'm over 50 years now. This is my 80th year. So in another month, I'm going to be 80 years old. And I sort of shake my head and I go, what's happened here? It's hard to believe that the time has gone that quickly, but through mindfulness, through awareness, life has become very different, and easier, happier. Things aren't always easy. I've not had an easy life. I know many people who've had a harder life, I'll say that. But have I learned through those struggles? Have I learned through the difficulties? And what have I learned? And that's where the mindfulness and the awareness comes. Yeah.
Can I make one comment on that?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that mindfulness, we do judge, and it's an inevitable aspect of being human. The problem is not judging. The problem is that it is self-referential judgment. We create a sense of self based on our unmet psychological needs predominantly and inner child wounding. So every moment we are judging based on am I good enough or not?
Yep.
I think the crux of mindfulness is, yes, awareness, and more importantly, meta-awareness, to know what you know. 2, being in a skillful relationship with the present moment. And 3, acting skillfully. And that means non-self-referential discernment. So you're taking each moment and you're comparing it against what Jayanta has said, is it meet the universal values of ethics, of kindness, of compassion, not what does it mean about me. And as you take the sense of self out of the equation, you're able to act skillfully. So I think that's the crux. non-self-referential, not judgment, discernment. Because the word judgment has a true evaluative, negative connotation to it. So,
Well, that gets into, you're exactly right, but that gets into, am I as good as, am I better than, or am I worse than?
yes.
You know, and in the Buddhist teachings, there's dukkha, anicca, anatta. And in those teachings, it says that if you have an insight, and I'll use the word insight, that can go on forever, explaining that, but if I have that insight, then there's no I. So it's dukkha, suffering, anicca, impermanence, and anatta, which is selflessness, no self. And then on the realization of those three aspects of the teachings, you're enlightened. So what does enlightening mean? It means being free of dukkha. So that's our challenge as we're here, all of us. And we can work with that. We can work with it. Yeah, it's not easy, but it's definitely possible. And we know that through some of the great people, the Dalai Lama, for instance, Bhikkhu Bodhi is another one of my favorites. My teachers, Ajahn Pasano, Ajahn Amaro, they're wise people. And for me, that wisdom, as I said earlier, is the understood experience. So it's through our experiences can we understand dukkha, anicca, anatta, unsatisfactoriness, selflessness, impermanence, changing. So it all comes together. It's sort of, yeah. And that's exciting when you get to the point where you can see and experience it all come together. You know, for years, I just did little bits of here and here and here. And that's where the 10 years and the 20 years become important, is to look back and say, oh yeah, I understand that now. Didn't understand that before.
Jayanta, can you mentioned this experience of getting out of the way. So have you gotten back in the way, or has that unfolded for you over the years?
Profoundly changed me. Profoundly.
That one.
I've had others. That's just one of some. I just feel different. I am different. I don't get angry hardly ever. More patient, more understanding, a lot more compassion for everything. Not just myself, but for everything. There's a shift. That wasn't my first experience. My very first experience was another one, and I didn't have a clue what was going on. That one happened in meditation for me as well, and so I sat in meditation, and all of this was happening. And so after I went to Anagarika, and I said to her, this and this happened, I don't know what was going on. And so then she explained to me what was happening. And then she said to me, and it was really important at that time, she said, it'll take the cells of your body and your mental understanding about 7 years to fully embrace the change that's happening. And that I still think of that. So it's not like you just all of a sudden get up one morning and think, oh, I'm a different person. There were changes and I could feel them, but it was 7 years before it was just part of me. It was natural that was part of my being.
And I'm just curious, I don't want to make it like super intellectual, but It's mentioned you were a Theravadan,
I am,
in the Theravadan tradition.
yes.
And so my understanding, there's the fetter model. Do you know of the 10 fetters?
Yes, yes,
Um,
okay, yep,
And so one of the first fetter being this experience of initial insight into yourself.
yes,
And then the 8th fetter is this dropping of conceit.
yes.
And I've always found it so weird that there's so much a difference between 1 to 8, and it all seems to be to do with this sense of self.
Yes.
And I'm just curious if that model and your experience, if you could speak at all to that, I don't know.
I like it.
Can you summarize the question? You understand better than I do.
Thank you. I don't know if I do. In the Buddhist teachings, in the Abhidhamma means higher teachings in the Theravada tradition. Okay? And it was what Anagarika loved. And most people find it extremely boring. And it's learning 8 of this and 5 of that, and there's just lists and lists of things. And we learned it. And at that time, I just learned it intellectually. And it wasn't until lots and lots of meditation, sitting, experiencing these things. And so these 10 fetters, they're just part of the list, and it's part of one's own growth, spiritual growth. And if you remember, because I know you've done some studying in this regard too, but if you remember, when one goes through, in the Theravada tradition, into these various stages of awakening, the very last thing to go is conceit. It's tied very closely with attachment, with a desire. And so when this conceit falls away, then there's no I, you see. You start operating from that place where, I'm Shirley, I'm Jayanta, but on an ultimate level, I'm nobody. And that's what you start operating with when you go working through these different stages. Some are more subtle, some seem to be quicker, as I at least have experienced them. But conceit is, that hangs on a lot.
And is that like a sense of pride in being a spiritual practitioner, or the word conceit? I don't know what it means.
Yeah, again, in the Buddhist tradition, it's different than you would probably find in Western psychology. It's a sense of me, just me. Yeah. And then it gets back into what Phil was saying. There's that sense then of comparing, judging. And so the more we can let go of that me, then we see things as they are from a point of view of harmony, balance, equilibrium. And those are all hard qualities. The 4 Brahma Viharas, you've got loving kindness, you've got compassion, you've got sympathetic joy. All 3, there's equanimity, but these 3, the first 3, are all part of a heart quality. And that heart quality brings us, in the Buddhist teachings, to this place of awakening, to this place of calmness. And so there's no I there. It's hard to describe. Yes?
So you had mentioned about, in your own path, in your own journey, how you've noticed a greater compassion, and then you just talked about the heart qualities. So what wisdom do you think either you or the Buddha would have around kind of so much suffering in the world? so much suffering, so much compassion with so much suffering. How do people, and there always has been suffering, but there
Yes.
seems just to be even more suffering. So how do people, practitioners, how do we hold that wisely? How do we be with that suffering, with that compassion, when there's so much of it?
You've asked eloquently, so I hope I can do it justice, how we can maintain compassion in the face of so much suffering in the world.
In the again, Buddhist teachings, you don't, which for me really answered for me, because I was raised in a Christian, not a strong Christian family at all, but in a Christian family. And then when I came to the Buddhist teachings, and the Buddha says, don't worry about where things start. There's 4 imponderables, and how things began is one of them. But in saying that, I do believe that we are here as human beings in this planet at this time to learn and to become free. We've got that opportunity. I do believe there's still a lot of suffering. There always has been in my interpretation of the teachings. And that doesn't mean that there aren't possibilities for all of us to awaken, to become mindful in freedom. And that means working with back to suffering, impermanence, non-self, in those qualities, with those qualities. So for me, the compassion is understanding that everybody has suffering, accepting that. Know that I can't go out and save the world. None of us individually can do that. But if each of us work on ourselves and we become the best that we can become, that's, I think, how things are going to unfold in a more healthy, beneficial way. I don't believe that getting caught up in somebody else's pain is helping. And there is lots. But I don't think there's probably any more, I don't believe, than there was in the Stone Age, or, yeah. I've been reading some novels recently about particularly women in the 17th century. Talk about a hard life. Yeah. So, I mean, and us sitting here, warm room, we've had supper, to be grateful for that.
So maybe not a question, but a point of discussion along the same line. There's a misunderstanding often of compassion.
Yes.
And the point being that the idea is to not be adding even more suffering to the situation. Mm-hmm. Like, why take on the suffering and suffer myself? Yeah. It's not necessary, it's not helpful. No. I'm just adding more suffering to the whole equation. Yeah. So real compassion is something else. Would you like to speak to that?
For me, it's just understanding other people's unsatisfactoriness, their dukkha, and resignating, but not, like you say, not taking it on. And at the same time, being skillful in how we deal with other people's suffering. Really an important part. And that is, for me, that's the compassion. It's that understanding that there is pain. Yeah. We do struggle.
Thank you.
I have no clue what time it is.
It's
16.
17.
Okay.
So that question that we had, does that speak to the fourth Brahmavihara of equanimity? In the sense that, sure, getting bombed is worse than eating your favorite chocolate ice cream, but it's not what has happened, it's how you're in relationship with what has happened, good or bad. And I think that's how you deal with the question of, well, there's so much suffering, well, what do you do with it? And to say, oh my God, this is terrible, what you're probably doing is selfing in that sense. Saying, you're projecting yourself into what's going on, this is terrible, I'm terrible. As opposed to, how can I act skillfully with whatever presents, whether it is good or bad. So I think that speaks to equanimity.
It does. In the Buddhist teachings, they say if you develop loving kindness, compassion, mudita, that equanimity will happen on its own. That's how you work towards equanimity, is the other three qualities. That's one approach. I know there's many, but that's a good one. And it brings me back to your question too with pain. It's how am I reacting? Can I stay balanced? Can I stay accepting of what is going on without pushing or pulling? It does happen, but it does take practice.
So if you were going to give I guess the word definition is always a hard word. What would your definition, because we're talking about sati.
Yes.
That was the original talk.
Yeah.
We've learned so much. So what would be a definition for everybody to go away with for mindfulness, according to Jayanta?
According to me. It would vary depending on who I was talking to and what I was doing. There would be times when I would say just awareness. There would be times when it would be heartfelt and understanding from here. There would be times when it was balance, equanimity, remembering. Traditionally, I learned it as remembering or memory, sati. And in that regard, it was remembering. Things are going to come to our minds. We're going to remember things. But can I remember them and stay balanced? Can I stay with equanimity as I remember something? Chances are you're not going to be able to do that. For most of us, if we're not trained, if we remember something, we're emotionally, emotions here are really an important part. Because emotionally, I'm either get excited by it, or I don't like it and I get angry. There's all sort of reactions to that memory. Memory itself is just a memory. So I think that's an important thing to remember. Remembering, mindfulness, sati.
Relinquishing.
Relinquishing.
That was the word that stood out for me.
And that's what I'm going to give each of you some homework tonight. What words come from just me rambling on here? What words triggered something for you? And relinquishment was a word that when I got a hold of that one, I loved it. There was just something that there was a freedom for me with relinquishment. Another word that really stood out for me in my teaching, I was able to study, he's not dead now, a Buddhist monk by the name of Punaji. And he, a fabulous monk, years and years as a monk, lots and lots of study, but he did a whole bunch of degrees in the States. So he had doctorates in psychology, philosophy, all sorts of things. So his teachings, he takes and compares the Buddhist teachings with current ideas in psychology. And in the Noble Eightfold Path, it's right view, right intention, and using the word right. And that in Pali it's sama. And Punaji says that's not a good translation. He didn't like it. He does this a lot in his teachings, or he did this a lot in his teachings. And the word he came up with was harmonious. Well, the lights went on for me when I heard that. You know, harmonious speech, harmonious action, harmonious intention, rather than right and wrong. Because for me, the Western idea, especially the Christian concept, it's right or it's wrong, you know. And he used the word harmonious. So that was another word that really stuck with me, as well as relinquishment. Yeah, those were big words for me.
Any last question? Can you tell us that you say this phrase, the Noble Eightfold, as in the number 8, full path?
There's 4 noble truths, and so there's the first noble truth is suffering or dukkha. The second noble truth is the cause of the suffering. The third noble truth is the relinquishment or the letting go of what that is. And the fourth noble truth is the path. The Buddha was really clever. I think really gave us this path. All you got to do is follow this path and you'll come to awakening. You'll become free of greed, hatred, and delusion. It sounds simple, and yet it's lifetimes of work and journey, but those eightfold path starts with right view and right intention, and those two make up what's known as the wisdom part. And then there's right speech, right action, right livelihood is the next 3, and those 3 make up a group of how to live. Eh? Yeah, morals, sort of. And then you've got right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. And those make up the meditation group or the practice, the group. So, and you can't have one, really, I don't think, without the other. You've got to make effort. What does effort mean? Mindfulness, middle one there, and then samadhi, right concentration, which is, again, Punaji didn't like that word concentration, because, and I didn't like it, because for me it meant concentrating, meant working hard, focusing, narrowing my view. And in meditation, we're trying to open. Rather than focus and become so centered, we're working on softening, opening. And all of that becomes part of what's known as the meditation group.
So what word did he like instead of concentration?
Focus.
Like a binocular.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of lens.
That's right.
That kind of focus.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm sure that we could probably sit here for another hour or 2 listening to you and enjoying. Thank you very much, Jayanta.
Thank you very
For
much.
coming
Thanks,
to
everyone, for
our wellness
bearing with me.
meeting. We really appreciate it.